going to be looking at some of the things that you most associate with spring: courtship and babies. So I'll be honest, there's a lot of that going on around here, but depending on the animals, it can be really tricky to get on camera. So we're just going to kind of breeze over it and have a look at some of the different ways that animals go about becoming parents. So we're going to start with some birds. We have some house sparrows who will very reliably nest in the holes in the walls, like this one, every single year. Now, they're not there right this second because they don't like it when I stand here and point it out, because they think I don't know it's there, obviously. So in about March, the male came and sat on the rim and started calling for his female to come and inspect this prime real estate he found. The sparrows generally have one established mate and they will stick with them, but he still needs to prove that he's worthy of this female and he's worthy of this great spot, and that that's really duly noted by all other sparrows in the area. One of the problems with birds' nests is they're often in very awkward places to look, even if you know where they are. I've tried peering in this one. You'd think that was an easy spot. It's not too high, but actually it kind of slopes up on the inside and you can't see anything. I mean, I tried. It's a little bit invasive and I'd probably rather leave it there. But it is super common in birds' nests, even if you know where they are. It can be really, really hard to see in them because they're often in high trees, or there are a lot of leaves, or they're in a tiny hole in the wall. And that's just the ones you know about. So we're going to move on from birds, because short of having like a drone and some nest cams and, you know, a helicopter with thermal imaging, GPS collars on my birds, I don't think we're going to find very many of them. So let's move on to an animal that we can see. So we're going to look at some ants. So when you're thinking about spring babies, ants maybe aren't the first animal that springs to mind. You're probably thinking about like lambs and chicks. Those aren't even wild animals, guys. Come on. So ants need to reproduce as well, of course. And you probably know that ants live in huge colonies underground and they all play their part and they're very big on teamwork. Did you know that all of the worker ants in that colony are female? In fact, they only make males for one purpose, and that is reproduction. So every now and then you'll get the colonies will make male ants, and they'll have wings, and at the same time, or approximately the same time, the colony will also produce virgin queens, which are essentially princess ants that will go on to be queens and who are also given wings at that time. And then they'll all leave the colony and they'll engage in this thing called the nuptial flight, where the virgin queens will mate with a whole series of males flying about. And it's at those times of year where you get swarms of flying ants, and they're super annoying. They always end up in your glass of water and pain. So that time the males are going to die because they serve no further purpose, and the princess ants will lose their wings, create a little burrow in the ground, lay their first eggs, which will eventually hatch into the first female workers, which will start taking care of the colony. So then to reproduce, the queen is going to lay all the eggs throughout the year. So she only mates that one time before she starts her colony, but that's enough to keep her going all year. So it could be with several males or not, it's normally with several, and then she'll just lay eggs throughout the year, and the females in the colony will look after them. So they'll go about reproduction now in a way that's very similar to a lot of insects. So they'll start by laying their eggs, and then the egg will eventually grow into a larvae, which will be fed by the colony on different kinds of liquids until it's old enough to metamorphose into a pupae, where it kind of looks like an adult ant, but it's all white and it's all kind of curled up. And at this stage, a lot of species will create a cocoon around themselves. So if you happen to see the pupae in a nest, then that's probably what you see is just the cocoon. And then over time the cocoon will darken, and then the adult ant will eventually emerge. And they can start it all over again. And a lot of insect reproduction kind of follows this pattern of eggs to larvae to some kind of metamorphosis stage. And throughout all of that, different areas of the colony will be used for nurseries. So they'll have like a chamber for the eggs and a chamber for the larvae and a chamber for the pupae, depending on like temperature and humidity and things like that, and have different workers. It's all very, very well organized. But yeah, let's just have a look in. We have a little colony around here. So yeah, here you can see, I mean, I've panicked them a bit now. I apologize, ants. But yeah, here you can see they've got all these different pupae on the surface. Maybe they needed to keep them a bit more chilled than the eggs. I'll just pop this rock back on top here and leave them be. So yeah, that's pretty much how they do it, and you've probably seen a lot of ant colonies around. You may have seen them moving their eggs about or anything like that. They have a super interesting social dynamic going on, so it's always good to have a look. Let's move on to some other animals. Okay, so I was thinking it might be nice to go and look if there are any frogs about that are maybe mating at this time of year. Okay, so we want to go find some frogs. Alpies and dogs. Bring your dog or not. They don't really contribute much to this. What we're going to need is a camera for frog spotting. Here I have a very important tool. It's a stick I found. It's quite long, it's quite solid. You want to make sure your stick's quite solid. Then you're going to get your camera. My waterproof camera is a little bit broken on one end. Just tape that up. It's all good. So now we're just going to fix the camera to a pole. Hold it. Alright, let's go find some frogs. So these are actually spiny toads, not frogs. That's the male on top and the larger female underneath. And he's kind of clinging onto her in this grip called amplexus. which allows the male to fertilize the spawn as the female is laying. To help with this, the male has like nuptial pads on his thumbs that like help him hold on to the female so she can't throw him off. Saturn plexus is actually really hard for everybody involved. Obviously the female still needs to get around and you know, feed, and she needs to lay her eggs, and she's got this male hanging out on her back, and the male will be there from the time before she starts laying eggs to after all of it has been spawned, and that could take weeks. Talk about clingy, am I right? So he's just hanging about there for a real long time, and he is not going to eat the entire time he's on there, because obviously if he lets go to go eat, then some other male could take his spot. So it's pretty intense. So down here we have a whole tangle of toad spawn, and you can be sure it's toad spawn because, I mean, for a start, we've only seen the toads mating around here, which kind of rules out anybody else. But also, you'll notice that it's in these kind of lines. So toad spawn is laying in like strands, whereas frog spawn is laying in like little jelly blobs. You can definitely see the strands in this spawn, so there you go. Okay, well, we'll just leave them to it for now, let them get on with it, and I'm going to check back in a little while and see how that toad spawn is getting on, and if we're going to have a load of tadpoles this year. Okay, so we're going to finish off with the type of animal that you're probably most acquainted with and how they reproduce, which is of course mammals, like us. So we're going to use as an illustration here wild boar, because there are loads of them around the garden at the moment. So a lot of mammals have a very similar type of reproduction cycle. So in this case, which is not dissimilar to a lot of species, we have a group of females, and the males will be solitary and, you know, more vagabond, and they will come and mate with a whole group of females at once. Then after a gestation period of, in this case, about 4 months, but it depends on the species, the female will give birth to a litter of piglets that she will keep in a little nest that she has dug for them. And they'll stay there for about 10 days, and then they'll probably start following her about. And then after about 3 months, they'll be weaned, and they'll just stay with the group till they're about a year old. So we actually have this really cute family who has been coming into the garden recently. Obviously, the boar dig up the garden, which is inconvenient, but they are super cute at this stage. And those little ones, they're sometimes called squeakers, which is adorable. They're all stripy, and which is meant to help them with camouflage. I don't know if that really works, but that's the idea. At first glance, you might think that this family consists of, you know, the dad, the mum, and then the 4 babies, but I mean, the dads don't really play a big role in the rearing of the young. So as you can see from this video, the larger one is very clearly the mother. And the slightly smaller one is probably like a yearling, one of the juveniles from last year who hasn't left her mother yet. And the older siblings kind of stick around and help out with the young whilst they're there. So in these kind of animals, you don't really get, you know, footage of them mating and the whole, they don't really do the courtship thing. It's just a lot of fighting between males. and it's pretty unwise to go looking for a wild boar's den while she has young in it, so I really wouldn't recommend that. If you want to see them and you have them around, a camera trap will do the trick just fine. Okay, well I think that's it for now, and we'll see you soon.